大家好，我是美国认证大学咨询师 Janet。今天主题针对 SAT。关于标化考试，美国统一的标化考试分为3大类。第一类 SAT 和 ACT， 每年5月的 AP 课程考试是第2类。第3类呢是 SAT-2 课程考试。AP 课程难度比普通课程难度大，不过优势在于 AP 课程 weighted GPA 成绩多一个点，比如 AP 课程A 是5分。那么大多的大学呢是按照 weighted GPA 评估学生，也就是包含 AP 和 Honor 的成绩评估学生。虽然现在对标化考试有一些负面的意见，但是标化考试还是很有必要性的，因为标化考试的目的是横向比较学生。各高中的课程难易度不太一样，即使是在同一个高中，2个不同老师教同一门课程，他们的课程难易度和打分的标准也不一样。比如有的老师只给前 5% 的学生 A， 有的老师呢给前 30% 的学生 A， 所以横向比较学生非常有必要。标化考试呢在近期呢也不会消失。如果想知道某个高中学业轻重和学霸的比例，那么可以从高中平均的 SAT 分数可以看出，大部分高中是公布这个数据的。对于大多数学生来说呢，在自己的高中排名前 10%、20% 更有优势。比较吃亏的一类学生是比较好的学生，但是在特别学霸特别多的高中，然后学生呢排名比较靠后，这样的学生呢是比较吃亏的。关于 SAT 和 ACT 的考试时间，大多的学生在11年级考，但是呢这个问题是11年级是高中最繁忙的一年。有很多的 AP 啊 Honor 啊，还有各种各样的标化考试，所以有的学生呢就在10年级到11年级的暑假考，这样可以减缓一些11年级的压力。当然了，也有个别的同学更提前，这部分同学呢基本上是为了申请优秀的下校。SAT 和 ACT 的作文部分呢，在考试的时候的确是 optional， 学生可以考也可以不考。但是如果学生的目标大学是前30名的话， SAT 和 ACT 的作文必须考。如果学生目标大学包含 UC 加州大学，那么作文部分也是必考。如果学生未来的目标大学是俄亥俄州立大学这样几万人的这种公立大学，那么 SAT 和 ACT 作文呢的确是 optional， 可考可不考。所以根据学生的目标大学而定。有的大学 SAT、ACT 是 test optional， 也就是说你可以提交也可以不提交，比如说 Wake Forest 维克森林，比如说 U Chicago 芝加哥大学，那么学生需要提交 SAT、ACT 的成绩吗？我的建议是，如果学生 SAT 和 ACT 的成绩好，那么肯定是需要提交的，而且提交了比较好的成绩对申请也有优势，尤其是对于华裔和国内的学生。接下来由大学理事会认证评审官 Neal 老师，具有10年备考和英语教学的经验的 Neal 老师和我们分享 SAT 阅读、语法和作文部分。
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. That's right, there are 4 different reading passages, 4 different types of reading passages. The first one on the test is always the literature passage. Then it mixes up, and it could be a combination of history, social science, or science. There's always at least one of each, and there could be a dual passage. There's always a dual passage, and it could be any one of them. Very frequently, the dual passage is history, though. So there's always 5 split between 4 different subjects, only 1 lit ever, and the dual passage can be science, social science, or history, but it's usually history. I would say there are 2 reasons why students usually find those kinds of passages difficult, maybe 3 actually. First of all is they're just difficult. period, for any language level, for anybody with native language ability or any level of education, history and literature passages tend to be the most challenging because they're the least concrete. They're the most abstract in concept. So not everybody is good with abstract concepts, so that can be a challenge for them. Secondly, whether they're a Chinese student or international student, an ESL student, or a native language student, schools these days de-emphasize literature learning, and that has left a lot of students unprepared for the kind of analysis that they have to run into on these kinds of tests. And it's left them unprepared for what a lot of businesses are looking for, so it's about building that skill. And then finally, the third thing is that a lot of the literature passages and history passages are written in an old style of English going to the 19th century and sometimes even the 18th century if you're dealing with like the American Revolution type, like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson types. So all three of those factors together combine to make kids very terrified of running into the literature and history passages. And so that's why we try to make sure that kids get used to that kind of reading and writing. Well, I have with my SAT strategy that what I call multiple choice safety protocol. The most common problem that I run into is not a student's lack of ability to understand what's going on, but their lack of ability to understand how they use the logic that they're already pretty good with, but they don't think about their logic. So they don't have a system that they use to address multiple choice questions. So I teach them what I call my multiple choice safety system. It's the right set of actions to take in order to make sure that a student is doing the best they possibly can with their logic rather than just kind of guessing randomly. So that if they do the MCS, then they will be sure that it's that maybe their lack of understanding rather than their lack of logic that's causing them to make a mistake. So for example, first, it seems very basic, but once students get used to it, it really helps them move more quickly and more accurately. So the first step is to make sure you read the question, for example. Now, it seems really, really obvious that reading the question is the most important thing, but the example I always give is on a work site, for example, one of the most important things that they talk about is safety. So if you're in a train yard, when I was very young, I worked as a photographer for a company that took pictures of trains. It's a very odd job, but and in that, they 30% of every day on the train yard was taken up in safety about trains. And I wondered, well, why do you need to spend so much time telling people watch out for trains when there's trains everywhere and trains are dangerous? The thing is, when you do the same thing all the time, you aren't afraid of the things that can hurt you. And that's why you need to read the question. Even though it's really, really obvious that you, of course, need to read the question, if a student takes the test so many times that they get bored with it or they're not afraid of getting a wrong answer, then they won't read the question and they'll make a mistake. So I say, first step, read the question. Should be a little bit afraid of every question, a little bit afraid to get it wrong at every time. And after that, that's step one. Step two is make your own answer to the question before you look at the answer choices. And 3 is use good process of elimination. And 4 is when you've got 50-50, make sure that it's general over specific and it's never 100%. And of course, we go into more detail about the strategies in the class. Each one of the steps of the process is its own lecture. And by the end, students are much, much better at logical processing, not just on the test, but also with any kind of logical processing at all, argumentation and things like that. It works for all kinds of argument, even though you're just doing multiple choice strategy. As for the vocabulary book, that's a great question. One of the interesting things about the book that we're putting together is that we don't do it in a traditional vocabulary style where it's just like a list of words. What we've done is actually we've taken old SAT tests and we've scanned all the old SAT tests to find the words that come up most frequently. And then we've grouped them into categories of words that mean roughly the same thing. So for example, they're called word families. And one of the word families we've got is from the very certain or very sure word family. And we've got, 4, 7, 10, there's 11 words here. And they're organized based on what's the most common word that you need to know and what's the least common word that you need to know, but they're all here. So you can prioritize the ones, if you only want to study level 1, most common, then you can, or you can do all of them. So for example, the ones that you must know that aren't even considered vocabulary words for SAT are absolute and definite. Those are the level 0 words. If you don't know those, you have to know those first. Then at level 1, you have unequivocal, emphatic, explicit, stark, and indisputable. Those are ones that show up fairly frequently, and if you want to improve your vocabulary, that's a good place to start. Then level 2, you have downright, unqualified, and undisputed. Those are ones that show up less frequently, but they still function as words that are kind of in questions. And then finally, ones that have shown up or that fit in the family but haven't actually shown up on the test are unreserved, incontestable, categorical, and unmitigated. All of those mean very certain. But we've calculated how important they are to the vocabulary of the SAT. I think as a teacher, one of the most difficult things to do is to teach kids to enjoy reading for the sake of reading, because improving long-term reading and writing skills is extremely difficult if kids think of reading as a chore or reading as something they only have to do in school. So for younger students, for the junior high students, middle school students, what I like to do is approach reading less from a clinical, militaristic style of read this, this means this means this. And I try to I start students with things that they like, and then starting with what they like, the next step after that is classical literature related to the things that they like. And that usually over time helps them develop and see that, oh, reading's not painful. By the time they get to high school, they're well past the point of hating reading or hating writing or thinking that I'm not good at it or this isn't something that I can't do. By that time, they've seen multiple times working with me that, oh, this is something I can do. It's not always the way that it says in school. In fact, there's a lot of writing out there that means a lot to me. And I've had a lot of success with students in that regard. For vocabulary, actually, the way that I teach vocabulary when we do reading, when we do literature classes, is almost exactly the way that CollegeBoard wants you to do those words in text style questions where, okay, here's the word in the text and what does it mean right here. That's how vocabulary works. That's why CollegeBoard does it that way. When you're reading as a young person and you're developing your vocabulary, the way that you figure out a meaning of a word isn't that you pick up the dictionary. It's that you look at that paragraph, you look at that sentence, and you see, well, what does this most likely mean? Native learners of any language don't just pick up the dictionary every single time they see a word they don't know. They think, I think this word kind of means this. And then later on, they see it again, and they're like, oh, yeah, this definitely means this. And that's the kind of skill development, the individual skill development that I like to teach.
目前Neal老师教的学生有6年级的学生到12年级的学生。那么对于6年级、7年级、8年级的学生来说呢，Neal老师的方法呢是要提高学生的阅读写作的兴趣，提高学生阅读写作的信心，让学生觉得，哎，我能够写作，哎，我能够阅读这样很长很复杂的这种文章。如果学生觉得阅读写作是个任务，别人命令着他们写，那么这样很难继续，很难持久。所以说呢，他教课的第一步呢是找出学生的兴趣，首先呢是按照学生的兴趣让他们阅读，然后再融入更多的阅读不同类的文章啊写作。然后在词汇方面呢通过上下文的意思猜出这个词汇的意思呢，也是教学的一个重点之一，这也是按照大学理事会的要求来教学。
There's a lot of different things that we do to improve the later period students in SAT. At this point, at 9 to 10th grade, they hopefully have been already studying for a little while, but also it's not too late. So if they haven't had any study experience yet, there's a lot that can be done: multiple choice strategy, time management. What I find, however, the most common problem that students have besides multiple choice strategy is they don't want to do the test. And because they don't want to do the test, they're not very good at the test. So one of the biggest strategies that I do is try to get students aware of why it's important, why they're doing it. If a student feels like they're doing it just because they have to, then they're going to be bad. But if they do it because they want to, they're going to do great. Now, that primary mental strategy is on top of the various other skill-based strategies that we teach, like we were already talking about, the multiple choice strategy and knowing exactly what, learning how to read old style language and vocabulary development, all of those things. Along with larger scale strategies on top about mood and attitude and motivation. It's never too late. If you feel like you're behind, if a student feels like they're behind, they might be a little bit behind, but that doesn't mean that they can't still get a good SAT score. So take some practice tests, see how well you're doing. If you feel like you can do better, mostly the key to improving your SAT is to practice, and take as many tests as you can. But just make sure you're testing intelligently, that you're not just throwing yourself at it and getting frustrated and tearing out your hair and being like, oh, well, why am I doing this? Give up. Make a plan, set a goal, try to hit it. Don't be unrealistic. If you're starting out at 300 on your reading and writing, then don't expect to get an 800 in a month. That's not possible. There's no way to do that. But there are smart ways to study so that you can go from 300 to 600, maybe even more than that. But, be realistic in your expectations if you're starting low. Writing in language can be extremely challenging because, unlike the reading, there are a lot of rules that you do need to know. Fortunately, for a lot of students, it's a matter of learning the rules once, that not knowing that they didn't know them, and then they have no problem figuring it out. I have a specific style of teaching grammar that I find grammar lectures to be very boring and not useful, but I have a very specific set of rules to learn that help students learn some of the more challenging aspects of sentence construction, subject, verb, object, subject, verb, how to combine sentences properly. And once they know that, they generally have a much easier time of tackling the writing. A student who has never done any kind of grammar rules before, who learns the grammar rules, they can go from a 250 to a 750. Actually, usually the most difficult thing is the writing rules. If a student's reading is good, though, the writing rules are not so hard. Writing in language can be extremely challenging because, unlike the reading, there are a lot of rules that you do need to know. Fortunately, for a lot of students, it's a matter of learning the rules once, that not knowing that they didn't know them, and then they have no problem figuring it out. I have a specific style of teaching grammar that I find grammar lectures to be very boring and not useful, but I have a very specific set of rules to learn that help students learn some of the more challenging aspects of sentence construction, subject, verb, object, subject, verb, how to combine sentences properly. And once they know that, they generally have a much easier time of tackling the writing. A student who has never done any kind of grammar rules before, who learns the grammar rules, they can go from a 250 to a 750. Actually, usually the most difficult thing is the writing rules. If a student's reading is good, though, the writing rules are not so hard. The absolute most important part for the writing test is practice, even more so than the reading, because the reading test can have a bad passage that you just can't figure out, whereas the writing section, it's always the same rules, the same language, so practice makes perfect with writing. The essay is one of the most predictable and simplest skills to teach. Not that it's not still challenging, but it's very reliable to be the exact same thing every time. It's the thing I probably have the most experience in, even though I have a lot of experience in everything, but essay is one of the things that probably speak to my strengths as a teacher the most. The template is simple. The passage every single time is a persuasive essay, and persuasion always involves ethos, pathos, and logos. If students can learn how to recognize ethos, pathos, and logos, which is to say, like authority, emotion, and logic, they can identify when an author is employing authority, when they're employing emotion, when they're employing logic, then they can analyze passage for the SAT. And my template goes along with that ethos, pathos, logos perspective. They'll learn how to approach any persuasive text effectively and accurately, and then do what the SAT requires them to do, and not more and not less, in order to get the highest score they possibly can. If a student really understands ethos, pathos, and logos, they'll get above a 20 basically every single time when they use the system that I've developed. Thank you, everyone.